In the morning, I woke up and saw her looking a bit flustered, asking, "Did we maybe to it?" A mischievous thought crossed my mind, and I smiled broadly. "Yes. Was it your first time?" Her face turned red at those words, and I realized once again that she was indeed a cute person. I'm going to tell this cute little lady something important. But first, I want to tell the story of how she and I came to be on this morning. My name is John Hayward, 28 years old. I work for a construction company that specializes in remodeling and renovation. I'm neither handsome nor highly educated, just an average employee, but the company's benefits are good, and my salary is decent, so I'm content with my current situation. I'm aware that I'm not an outstanding worker. That's why I value communication with my colleagues and customers and pay close attention to building relationships based on trust. Thanks to that, I've been well liked by both colleagues and clients. Recently, I got a beautiful new boss. She's Mary Johnson, who joined our company through mid-career recruitment. I was astonished when I first saw her. She has beautiful skin that doesn't show her 35 years, intense yet large and bright eyes, and an impressive figure, wearing a suit that fits her body line perfectly. I wasn't the only male employee drawn to her legs peeking out from her skirt. I remember my heart pounding uncontrollably when I saw her tuck her hair behind her ear after our first introduction. She had an excellent sales record at her previous company, and our president personally recruited her. She's the complete opposite of an average employee like me, a career woman who's good at her job and on the fast track to success. People even talk about her possibly getting a managerial position in the future. Once I actually started working with her, the rumors seemed true, and Mary's work was amazing. But she seems to be the type who can't compromise in her work, for better or worse, and is strict with others and herself. What she says isn't wrong, but her way of speaking is a bit harsh, and colleagues began to fear her and keep their distance. As for me, I'm probably disliked by Mary. I'm not a fast worker. I'm the type who wants to do everything carefully, so my work is slow. My colleagues understand, and it's not slow enough to hinder work, so they've been tolerating it. But Mary doesn't seem to like it. I've often been told, "You're so slow, can't you work faster?" Well, it's true that I'm slow, and she's good at her job, so I guess looking at incompetent me must be frustrating for her. Thanks to my laid-back personality, I don't find Mary that annoying or scary. Well, in my mind, I have nicknamed her the Demon Boss. But after calling me slow, Mary always makes a face like she regrets it. And then she looks at me as if trying to gauge my reaction. I guess she regrets speaking too harshly but can't bring herself to apologize, I surmise. Her sorry and thank you to other employees also seem brusque, or maybe shy. She may be an incredibly awkward person. If she were more honest, she wouldn't be feared by her colleagues. But I can't say that to the Demon Boss, so I stay quiet. One day, when a big project that all the employees were working on together finished, we decided to have a celebration. The client we were dealing with in the project also ended up coming. Even so, Mary took care of the hosting, so I and other employees were able to enjoy the party quite a bit. But as the party went on, I noticed Mary was pretty drunk. Her face was slightly red, and her eyes were watery. Seeing the beautiful woman in that state, the male clients seemed smitten. I couldn't just leave her like that. I had Mary take a break and took over the hosting myself. I'm a strong drinker, so the guests seemed to enjoy drinking with me. As the party neared its end, the clients decided to leave early. They were smiling as they left, and a client named David said, "I'm glad I came, so the hosting must have been a success." After that, I sent off my tipsy colleagues who were talking about going to a second party, and I decided to take care of getting Mary a taxi. Being good with alcohol, I'm always entrusted with taking care of those who've had too much to drink. Even after everyone left, Mary seemed to be in a daze, unable to sober up. And when I tried to call a taxi, she suddenly said, "I want to breathe some fresh air." I thought, well, a little walk wouldn't hurt, so we strolled to a nearby park. I tried to smoothly escort the staggering Mary by walking close to her, but I was so nervous that I was worried she could hear my heartbeat. So we walked to the nearby park and sat down on a bench. I bought some warmie from a vending machine next to the bench and offered it to Mary. But Mary turned her face away and said, "No thanks, I still want to drink," and playfully whined. I was surprised to see this side of her when she's had alcohol. My usually stern and beautiful boss changes when she drinks, and I realized that probably no one else in the company knew this. I felt a sense of superiority knowing the surprising side of the beautiful Mary that only I knew. Then Mary started to look up at me and act spoiled, and even began to complain. "You think I'm just a nagging old lady, don't you? You hate me, don't you?" "No, I don't think so," I answered, and Mary glared at me angrily. "Liar, you definitely think so. Mary seems to be quite a handful when she's drunk." "Don't hate me, even though I really don't hate her. On the contrary, I've been interested in her since the day we met, and I can't stop my heart from pounding even now as I'm with her. I know I need to watch my tone, but when I'm at work, I just can't help being stern. There was a time when I was all smiles at work, but I've been told in my previous company that being beautiful helps you get jobs with your face. It made me so mad and sad. I started thinking that I couldn't just be smiling all the time." As she spoke, Mary looked down, looking sad, as if recalling that time. I think it must be tough for a woman to work hard in a male-dominated company and often hear such thoughtless remarks. She probably still feels traumatized by being told that she was getting work with her face. She must have been desperately acting strong so as not to be taken lightly. While trying to be recognized for who I am, regardless of gender, I became so absorbed in my work that people started to drift away. In my current company, I wanted to get along with everyone, but it didn't work out in the end. Maybe because of the alcohol. Her voice was choked with tears, and I felt sorry for her. "I'm sorry for calling you slow." "Oh, that's fine. It's probably true anyway." When I answered like that, Mary shook her head vigorously. "No, it's not that you're slow, but careful, I know that. But my boss said that because you're slow at work, they're considering transferring you to a different department. But I think you're a good fit here, and you're needed. But the higher-ups won't listen to me." I didn't know that. It would have been nice if you'd told me straight away. But if I said, "You might be transferred because you're slow at work," that would hurt you, wouldn't it? I think some people would be hurt by being called slow, but it seems she was trying to prevent me from being transferred by making me work faster. I understood why I was called slow, but I thought she was still clumsy. Although she's really kind, she just couldn't express it directly to others. I don't think her approach is right, but her clumsy kindness warmed my heart. After that, the two of us spent some time together in the night breeze. In a soft whisper, Mary said, "Do you remember when I asked you, 'You're scared of me, aren't you?' I vaguely recalled having that conversation a few months ago. I vaguely remember it. At that time, you said, 'I'm not scared at all. You work hard and achieve great results. I respect you.' I was so happy about that. I thought people around me didn't like me. It relieved me that someone saw my hard work and acknowledged it." I could remember it after she said that. Even though I'm not good at my job, I still respect Mary, who is competent, even if she's harsh. That's what I thought. But I was embarrassed that my casual remark had such an impact on her. If a beautiful boss I'm interested in tells me reassuring words, I'd be happy. But after that, Mary said something outrageous in her drunken state. "Ever since you said that, I've been gradually falling in love with you, but I'm kind of perverse, and I can't be honest about my real feelings, but I reflect on it every day. I think I'll be kind tomorrow, but it never works out. Why am I like this? I'm trying hard. You know I'm trying hard, right? My face must have been bright red as I was suddenly confessed to, and I was flustered, not knowing what to say. Yes, I think you're trying hard. Then, can you pat my head, stroke it? Mary tightly grabbed my hand and brought it to her head. My heart was pounding non-stop. I even started sweating. But now that I've come this far, I might as well go all out. With that thought, I stroked her head. She closed her eyes in contentment and whispered, "It feels good." I couldn't take my eyes off her as she enjoyed my touch. There was no trace of the demon boss in her. I was captivated by the sight of her, so different from what I knew. And then, leaning on my shoulder, she fell asleep. I had always had a crush on her, the beautiful and capable Mary, and respected her as well. Of course, I never thought someone like me would be accepted, so I never spoke my feelings. But at that moment, I wanted to protect her, who was whining and had fallen asleep. She didn't wake up again after that. I carried her like a princess to the taxi, but of course, I didn't know her address. So I had no choice but to take her to my house. In the taxi, she held my hand and wouldn't let go. But I was also sure that I was happy about it. When I finally brought her home after she got drunk, my extremely shy pet cat Chico greeted us. Moreover, Chico was licking her while she was asleep. Chico always threatens people other than me. I gently petted Chico. "You're not shy around Mary. Listen, I'm thinking of confessing my love to her tomorrow. What do you think?" Chico looked at me with big eyes and meowed. Then she rubbed herself against Mary. It seemed like the cat was cheering me on, so I decided to confess my love to my awkward boss tomorrow. The next day, Mary was surprised to find herself at my house. She seemed to faintly remember going to the park while drunk, but didn't remember much about the conversation. Then, she looked at me hesitantly and asked in a small voice, "Did we, by any chance, do it?" Her nervous appearance was so cute that I felt a little mischievous. "Yes. Was it your first time?" When I asked her that, she screamed "Day!" and covered her face with both hands, turning bright red. I couldn't help but laugh and quickly reassured her. "Don't worry, nothing weird happened. By doing it, I meant spending the night. I didn't know your address, so we came here, but as soon as we arrived, you fell asleep. I slept in another room, of course, it's fine." "Oh, don't scare me like that, but thank you, sorry for the trouble." As Mary looked downcast, Chico sidled up to comfort her. What a cute kitty. She seemed to love cats, and Mary petted Chico with gentle strokes. "I think you were very drunk yesterday, and Chico is comforting you, the perverse person who loves me." At those words, the hand that had been petting Chico stopped. Wait, what does that mean? What did I say to you yesterday?" I placed a hand on her panicked head and told her to calm down. And when she looked into my eyes, I said, "I like you too. Will you go out with me?" She was taken aback and couldn't keep up with the sudden development, her mouth agape. "Wait, I can't keep up with this. Why can't I remember yesterday? But, Yesh, please take care of me." I hugged her as she blushed and fidgeted in front of me. And then she put her arms around my back. From that day on, Mary was no longer a demon boss but my girlfriend. Later, at her insistence, I told her about our conversation in the park the previous day. My girlfriend, red-faced and teary-eyed with embarrassment, was utterly adorable. After starting our relationship, I decided to be there for her in her worries. I know that what she told me when she was drunk was her true feelings. She was overly tense because she had been told that she got her job because of her looks, and it had become a trauma. I really wanted to make her wish to get along with her colleagues come true. Then, at work, I got between Mary and her coworkers so that she could comfortably talk to people around her. Her colleagues have responded to her efforts, and now they have a good relationship. I also told them that Mary and I had started dating. I figured that if it's going to come out someday, it would be better to say it ourselves, so I proposed it. When I told my colleagues, the Mary next to me had turned bright red. My colleagues were surprised to see such a cute side of her, but I think it was a great opportunity to break down the barriers between Mary and the people around her. Looking at our colleagues discussing the grand entertainment at our wedding made me and Mary smile. My name is Robert Williams. I'm 28 and work in the food and beverage industry. Though I say food and beverage industry, I'm not on-site staff. I go to the office and work in sales promotion. Our department's job is to come up with plans to increase store sales and negotiate with clients who cooperate with us. I joined this company after graduating from high school and have been working in this department since I was a newcomer, now marking my 10th year. Most of my peers were college graduates, so, with my shallow knowledge and insufficient ability as a high school graduate, it was tough not to fall behind every day. But now that I'm in my 10th year, I have many individual tasks and no longer feel inferior. I think I can be trusted to work independently. I always arrive at the company 30 minutes before starting time. To start work smoothly, I check today's tasks and sort out the documents that arrived while I was away, placing them on the desks of the responsible staff members. This has become a habit or morning routine, and I can't shake it. Most people arrive about 10 minutes before starting, so I try to finish these tasks by then. Morning, Robert. Thanks as always. Wow, I didn't want to miss this document today, so thanks for giving it to me first thing. Thanks. My supervisor and colleague, Liam, call out to me like that. But since I'm just trying not to inconvenience myself, I feel a little embarrassed when they thank me. Then, my boss, Owen Smith, came to work. Owen is a supervisor 10 years my senior who transferred from another department last year. I have been in the sales promotion department longer, so we are often paired. But he is moody, changes his attitude depending on the person, and is not well liked. Hey, go make coffee. This morning, he just plumped down in his chair, looking grumpy, and said that to me. Good morning. The usual coffee is okay, right? I'll go make it. I responded lightly and went to the break room to make coffee. Robert, you really can do it without making a nasty face. He was clearly irritated by the praise for you, said Liam, who came to make coffee as well. Really, he's always like that. We talk while making coffee for ourselves and Liam. Thanks, but yesterday, after your proposal was accepted, he dumped a massive amount of miscellaneous tasks on you to finish today. The harassment is terrible. What? Was that harassment? I thought he was busy and asked me to do it. When I answered that way, Liam laughed, saying, "You're really naive or something." Owen, sorry to keep you waiting. Yeah, just put it there. A curt reply came back as he continued to stare at his computer screen. Seeing this, Liam sends me a wry smile, but it's just the usual Owen, so it doesn't matter to me. But it's best to leave him alone on an apparent bad day. I started my work without concern. Even so, when Owen transferred here, he was not as unapproachable, saying, "I don't know much about the promotion department's work, so please help me." But one day, after being called by the supervisor, who looked pleased, and being told, "This document you summarized the other day was really good." It's easy to see and understand when you make it, so the big bosses were saying they might ask you to do it next time too. You've raised your evaluation again, and receiving a small round of applause from nearby colleagues. I've been asked to prepare materials for the next meeting that the bigwigs will be attending. Ever since the time when I started being praised and rallied on by the supervisor, Owen's attitude towards me became more aggressive. Until just a moment ago, he was smiling and fawning over the executives, but as soon as they were gone, he would look at me, furrow his brow, and dump work on me, saying, "I'll give you this little job. Oh, put my name on it, or why are you the only one getting praised? You don't have much of a head on your shoulders," even directly expressing his disdain. It's clear that he doesn't feel good about me if we're working together. Though it's not like let sleeping dogs lie, we are often paired, so all I can do is go with the flow and get along with him. As for work, I'm enjoying it every day. except for having a troublesome boss. The crowded train to and from work is a bit tiring, but it's unavoidable in the city. Then, one evening after work, I was standing near the door on a crowded train. A black-haired woman was standing diagonally in front of me. It was clear that she wasn't American. What country is she from? What a beautiful hair color. I was thinking about that and standing blankly when I noticed that she was swaying in a way different from the train's shaking. She was pressing the temple area with her left hand and looking down, but her face was pale when she looked up slightly. Is she okay? I worried and glanced over, clearly noticing that her complexion was getting worse. Are you all right? When I asked, she nodded slightly, but she looked like she might collapse at any moment. Excuse me for a moment. I asked the person next to her to switch places, telling her, hold on if you need to. Let's get off at the next station. The person is a woman, so I'm worried about offending her. But before I know it, I've taken action. When we arrived at the station, I supported the woman as we got off the train. She really looked like she was struggling to stand. She was weak, but to keep from falling, she clung tightly to me as we walked to a bench. Kind strangers called for a station attendant, offered a bottle of water, and even draped a jacket over the woman. A station attendant who heard the commotion came over to the woman, saying, let's go to the medical room. Can you walk? I'll support you, I said to the woman. But watching her reaction, I suddenly realized something. Does she understand me? Thinking this, I ask in English, do you understand me? Do you speak English? I speak a little English. She replies immediately in English. Let's go to the medical room together. When I said this in English, she got up, holding on to me. Just then, another station attendant arrived with a wheelchair, and we headed to the medical room together. But once she laid down on the bed, her face was still pale, her hands were cold, and she seemed to be getting worse. The station attendant suggested calling an ambulance. I spoke to the anxious woman. I can interpret. Shall we go together? When I asked, she said, thank you, please. I just arrived in America and don't understand the language yet. Gripping my hand, an ambulance arrived quickly, and I went to the hospital to interpret. Fortunately, it seemed that stress and anemia were the cause, and she recovered after receiving an 4 drip and was allowed to go home. Thank you so much. I was really saved thanks to you. Her name is Amelia. Seeing her smile, I felt relieved. No problem. I'm glad you are feeling better. I'm glad I could help you. By the way, Amelia, I thought you might be from Europe based on your accent. Where are you from? Germany. I burst into laughter when I hear that Amelia is from Germany. Oh, I'm sorry for laughing. I should have asked you right away. Your language would have been easier to understand. When I reply in German, Amelia exclaims, wow, you understand German. I'm shocked, and laughs. Oh, by the way, Amelia, I'll take you home since I'm worried. Let's take a taxi together. Thank you so much. I'll take you up on that. And I decide to take her home. In the car, we introduced ourselves briefly and exchanged business cards. I was really saved because you were there. Let me thank you properly next time. I declined at first, but she insisted. So we made plans for a meal. During the conversation, we both stared at the business cards at the same time, and Amelia spoke first. You work in the food and beverage industry. Wait, Amelia, your company is that major one. We talked about each other's companies, and by the time we arrived at Amelia's apartment building, the conversation deepened. Let's talk more over dinner. I'll get in touch once I find a free day. Sure. See you next time then. With those words, we parted for the day, and I headed home. Days later, Amelia and I had dinner, and the conversation naturally turned to work. The more we talk, the deeper the conversation gets. The reason it gets so deep into work is that Amelia works to spread German beer in America, and I work in the food and beverage industry. I had no choice but to jump on. I've expressed all my thoughts. I really want to do business with your company. What do you think? Of course, I was not able to decide this on my own. But the more we talked, the more ideas came to mind, and I believe that if we team up, it will be beneficial for both sides. I told Amelia that I would take it back to the company and respond. The next day, I reported my conversation with Amelia to my supervisor. I briefly explained how I met Amelia, and then explained the subject of German beer. My supervisor seemed very impressed and said, "Sounds good, Robert. Give it a try." I conveyed this to Amelia and further discussed it, prepared documents, and submitted them. Soon, instructions came from the higher-ups to proceed, as it was a rather big deal. The company united to ensure the deal was successful, and a project team was formed. Since I had been advancing the discussion with Amelia, I was appointed as the team leader. This was my first time leading such a large deal, but with the support of my boss and colleagues, I began the exchange with Amelia. However, something unexpected happened midway. In the midst of the company's excitement over this large deal, there was only one person who was dissatisfied. It was my boss, Owen. "How far have you come? Are you really up to this? You can't handle such a big deal with just a high school diploma. Let me, a graduate from a national university, take over. I'll take over as leader. Give it to me." He said that, took the documents from my hand, and went straight to the supervisor to negotiate. Supervisor and Owen spent quite some time talking in another room. When the supervisor returned to the department, he seemed a bit worn out. "I'll take care of it, so be prepared," Owen told me cheerfully, and then headed off to negotiate with Amelia's company. "I'm really sorry, Robert. It was your project after all. Thank you for bringing it this far." He patted me on the shoulder and went to tell the project team that I had been removed. I never expected to be not only demoted from leader but also removed from the team. Apparently, the supervisor had no choice but to remove me, as I was the only one who could take over Owen's current job. But in essence, he was talked into it by Owen. Although it was frustrating, I told myself that my abilities were still not enough and focused on my newly assigned work. Then I heard a story from my colleague, Jack, who was on the project team. Owen's taking over my work from me was not only because he disliked me but also because he had ulterior motives. Come to think of it, Owen loved women from abroad. I have heard that he always went to pubs and bars where women from abroad worked for a drink after work. It's none of my business that Owen is single, but since the leader on the other side of this big deal was a German woman named Amelia, he seemed to have faint hopes of turning their acquaintance into a romantic relationship. Recently, Jack was invited to drink by Owen, and that's what he heard from him. I was dumbfounded by the unexpected reason. Surely he was getting carried away since it's rare to negotiate with people from abroad. However, I thought that as long as the negotiations were successful, that would be fine. I wonder if they've reached the final stage, since it's been a while since the change in leadership. I had to handle Owen's share of work as well, so my mind was away from the large deal, but I was curious. Just then, Jack happened to walk by, scratching his head. "Hey Jack, how's that project going? Is it almost settled?" Expecting a positive response, I called out cheerfully, but he replied with a rather grim face and a soft voice, "Well, about that." Apparently, the conversation was not progressing very well. There were problems with the negotiation documents and interpretation, as well as Owen's German level. The documents I have prepared were written in German for Amelia to understand, and only the important parts were translated into English for our members to understand. Since all the documents that Owen and the team had seen in the beginning were translated by me into English, Owen seemed to have been troubled when he started as a leader and all the new documents were in German. Of course, there was an interpreter for Amelia from the beginning, but the conversation during the negotiations was conducted almost entirely in English. The interpreter was translating German into English for Owen. The difficult part that didn't get through were translated into English, but the process of translating along the way was taking too much time. Because of that, things that should have been settled were not, and both Amelia and our higher-ups, who knew the progress, were in a heavy mood. While I was working at my desk, Liam came running over to me, looking flustered. "Robert, emergency. Come to the conference room immediately, please." When I asked what had happened, I found out that Amelia was about to throw in the towel. It seems Amelia was worn out from negotiating while translating. "I've had enough of this hassle. Please, call Robert. I trust him more than you." When Robert was here, everything went smoothly. Why has he been left out? Amelia seemed so dissatisfied that she was about to walk out. I hurried to the conference room, entered the room, and said, "Excuse me." Then, Amelia's face lit up, though she was angrily speaking German to Owen. Robert, I've been waiting. I really can't move this conversation forward. What's going on? Is he really your leader? He's totally useless. I apologize for my boss, but Amelia, calling him useless is a bit too much. Amelia happily spoke to me in German. I replied in German, and we both chuckled, unsure if it was a joke or serious. Owen and my colleagues were staring with their mouths open. It's natural since they don't understand German, but more importantly, Amelia's mood seemed to have improved now that I, who can speak German, was there. With Robert here, everything will be fine. Let's move on. Robert will be handling this, right? The interpreter translated Amelia's German words to Owen. Owen bit his lip with a bitter face and said only, "Robert, please," and moved to the seat behind him. Afterward, with me leading the conversation, we quickly reached the final stage. The next time we meet, the deal will surely be sealed. Before I knew it, my manager and other bosses had gathered in the conference room. I was thanked by my colleagues and manager, but then Jack asked, "But why do you speak German so fluently?" The truth is, I've been exposed to German since childhood. My father worked at the German branch office after being transferred to Germany. Now he's back here, but visiting Germany during summer and winter breaks has become a tradition. I naturally became interested in German, able to speak simple phrases. Growing up close to Germany, I wanted to study more, so I went to an international high school with a German language department. I considered moving to Germany after college, but even though my father worked abroad, we weren't a wealthy family. Thinking about the expenses for my siblings, I decided to support myself and, against my parents' wishes, gave up on college and chose to work. Everyone seemed to understand when I explained that, really, having Robert was a lifesaver. "Thank you." I was thanked again, but my manager turned to Owen, who was looking down at the back. "Owen, how are you going to move the conversation forward without understanding German?" The manager seemed somewhat baffled. "Well, I heard there was an interpreter." Owen mumbled, "The client only speaks German. Tell us in advance." We didn't even know the documents were all in German. Owen's anger turned to me. "I told you she was German, so I thought you'd understand." Someone chuckled at that. Upon hearing that, Owen clicked his tongue and left the room, looking frustrated. A few months later, the collaboration between German beer and the restaurant was a huge success. The response was greater than expected, and both Amelia's company and ours made substantial sales. In celebration, today Amelia and I are dining at a fancy restaurant. We were truly meant to meet. Who would have thought it would lead to this from a chance encounter on a train? We laughed and sipped our wine. We've actually been dating for a while now. After she confessed her feelings to me, I was surprised but had feelings for her too, so we started dating. On the way home from this date, we bumped into Owen, Robert, and Amelia. "What are you two?" Seeing Amelia's arm entwined with mine, Owen was speechless. We're dating now." I was a bit embarrassed, but there was no use hiding it. After reporting this, Owen let out a scream of astonishment. The next day, I found out why Owen had made that noise. "Why are you next to Amelia? It should have been me." He came to me first thing in the morning and said that, looking frustrated. After closing a business deal, though he felt embarrassed about giving up midway, Owen, who had fallen head over heels for Amelia, went the extra mile to look up some German phrases, and it seems he confessed to her, albeit in broken German. However, it seems he was turned down by Amelia. He even declared he was done with his favorite bar and even was preparing to attend German language classes. Owen, who had spectacularly crashed and burned, seems to have returned to being a regular at the bar. Not knowing any of this, I felt a bit guilty, but Owen has stopped being as snarky as before since his defeat. The work environment in our department has improved, and my internal evaluation within the company is on the rise, thanks to that major project. My personal life is fulfilling as well, and I am living happy days. When I opened the window, it smelled the scent of the earth. It seems the rain that had been falling since last night has stopped, and sunlight is peeking through the clouds. Now that the rain has stopped, it's going to be a busy day. My name is Stephen Carter. I work at a small clinic located in a mountainous region. similar to the Appalachians, which is facing depopulation. It's already been 2 years since I started working at this clinic. I feel like I've somewhat become part of the community here. I remember that when I first arrived, the local folks seemed a bit hesitant about me, as my predecessor had suddenly returned to a university hospital. They probably looked at me thinking, I'll probably go back to the university hospital soon too. I had a strong desire to settle down and dedicate myself to the patients here, and wondered how I could make them understand that. At such times, the one who gave me advice was Erica Johnson, who had been working as a nurse in this clinic since the days of my predecessor. She is originally from this area, and after graduating from nursing school, she worked in another hospital for a short period before returning. She's 2 years younger than me, but she's very responsible. I felt like she was always helping me out during the initial days. Though she seemed upset about the predecessor suddenly quitting, she firmly told the locals that it wasn't right for me to face any disadvantages because of that. She's a hard worker, strict but kind. She often says that nursing is her calling. Moreover, she's famously known as the most beautiful lady in this region. There are even folks who visit this clinic just to see her. I remember being taken aback by her beauty the first time I saw her. She has strong, intense eyes, but when she laughs, her aura changes dramatically. Away from work, she's like a gentle spring breeze. No wonder she's so popular. Good morning. Looks like we're busy today as well. Enjoy the scent of the mountains while daydreaming. It seems Erica has already arrived for work. She's all set and ready. The lady working part-time as a receptionist is Erica's aunt, and she also seemed to have come in for work. Yesterday's rain made it difficult for the elderly to visit the clinic. There might have been patients who felt unwell but couldn't make it. Our intuition was spot on. From morning to evening, the clinic was bustling. We barely had any time for lunch. Fortunately, there weren't any major emergencies, and we managed to treat everyone calmly. As I watched the last patient leave, exhaustion hit me all at once. I went back to my office and slumped in my chair. Sitting on a round stool, Erica, looking equally worn out, smiled and said, "It's been a long day. But we didn't have any complicated cases today." Looking at the towering pile of medical records, I thought finishing up would take us till midnight. She probably read my expression. "Shall we postpone Samantha's counseling session for today? Caring about my well-being," that's what Erica suggested. The last medical record left on the table was of Samantha, Erica's younger sister. She's a bit mentally unwell. She goes back and forth between the present and the past in her mind, acting as if she's someone else. Sometimes, she spends the whole day with someone who isn't really there. She needs mental care. After regular consultation hours, I provide counseling. We do this twice a week. It's okay, everything's on track. In response to my comment, Erica lowered her head apologetically. Originally, I worked as a surgeon. I'm new to psychiatry, so I'm learning as I go. Moreover, my patient, Samantha, is a tough nut to crack, showing no sign of opening up to me. After seeing her, I'm often overwhelmed by exhaustion and self-loathing. Samantha, always on time, I see. The clinic door opened quietly, and Samantha, pale-faced, walked in. It seemed she couldn't hear Erica's voice at all. Her pale complexion was a usual sight. She sat emotionlessly on the round chair after Erica left and looked straight at me. "Samantha, it was a beautiful day today. Anything new happen?" In response to my question, Samantha shook her head. Then she smiled, just with her lips. "Don't always ask about me. Tell me about you today." She looked up at me, her chin resting on her crossed legs. If Erica is a gentle spring breeze, Samantha is a harsh north wind. She always seems to be challenging something. Tough on herself and others. About me. I unintentionally echoed her question, and she nodded slowly. Encouraged by Samantha, I began to tell my story. There's a reason I chose this clinic. Back when I was in mid-school, I got caught in a slip and fall accident near this clinic. The doctor who treated me back then was the previous doctor of this clinic. After first aid, I was airlifted to a major hospital. According to the doctors at the hospital I was transferred to, I was told there would be no lingering effects because of the initial treatment I received. I had to take a year off from college, but I've been fine since, with no after effects. I heard that the previous doctor suddenly quit, and the clinic was in need of a doctor. I applied to work here as a way to repay the favor. Well, really? So, you know about Liam? As I talked about my past, Samantha squinted her eyes. Liam was my predecessor. There were a rumor that he and Samantha were romantically involved. It was said that her mental disturbance began when he suddenly left her. Samantha seemed to be having a good time chatting and dating with Liam, who wasn't present. It seems she's started to retreat into a world of fantasy. The reason Erica asked me to give Samantha mental care was that these occurrences became frequent. Samantha seems completely unaware of her actions. You didn't graduate with your peers, did you? What were you doing after? You didn't come straight here after graduation, did you? I nodded and explained the reason. After graduation, I immediately joined a medical mission abroad. Being invited by a senior was one reason, but I also wanted to see the American medical care from a bird's eye view of the world. Every hospital has its politics. The prestige of the university you graduated from can set a pecking order in society. One of my peers was the son of a renowned medical professor. His name is Max. I heard he's currently working at a university hospital. Max would flaunt his father's position and look down on other peers. Overseas medical missions are possible if you have a medical license. After gaining a lot of experience abroad and finally gaining some confidence, I decided to return to the States. That's when I chose this clinic. I always thought you were an oddball, but you're interesting. That day's counseling session ended in a way where it was hard to tell who was the patient and who was the therapist. In the end, I couldn't get any information out of Samantha. Watching her leave from the front door, a thought struck me. I questioned if Samantha really has a mental illness. Interacting with her a few times, I realized she's sharp-minded. She can foresee the course of conversations and loves delving deep into matters. She might just be pretending to be mentally ill. But then the question arises, why? The past month felt like being pulled around by her. During those days, I received an unexpected invitation from the city. There was a request to share my experiences from my overseas medical mission in a lecture. The invitation also mentioned that some of my university peers would be speaking. It felt like a good opportunity for a reunion. I consulted with Erica and decided to take a couple of days off from the clinic. For me, I'm a special guest. The lecture felt laid back. Dr. Stephen, I heard you're heading to New York after a long time. I have some errands around the same time, so I could give you a ride. Samantha said this during our post-treatment counseling. She usually rides a big motorcycle. She said I could ride with her since she had her own errands. Although it seemed a bit scary, it might be a good chance to get closer to her. Maybe I'll take you up on that offer. When I said that, she laughed and told me, "Don't be scared." Turns out, I was scared. By the time we got there, I was so stiff with fear. I swear it's not because she's a bad or reckless driver. It's just that I'm a scaredy cat. I've never ridden a motorcycle before, and the idea of a petite woman like her handling such a big, heavy motorcycle was unnerving, I suppose. But despite my worries, she handled the motorcycle as if it were an extension of her own body. We reached our hotel in no time. She helped me off the bike at the entrance. "I'll come pick you up for the ride back," Samantha said before she left. Samantha said she had something else to do, so perhaps she was in a hurry. The next day, I arrived at the conference venue and was taken aback. I had assumed it was going to be a small-scale event, but it was packed with college professors and young doctors. I even spotted some of my medical school classmates. Because I had to take a year off due to an injury, I graduated a year later than everyone else. I remembered a friend telling me that some people thought I had dropped out midway. I really didn't want to bump into anyone troublesome. So, I decided to focus on my presentation. My speech went well, and the organizers even praised it, so I was relieved. That's because the speakers before me were college professors and prominent young doctors. I was sweating bullets from start to finish, wondering if it was all right for me to be the grand finale. The organizers asked me to attend a social event that night. The venue was the hotel's large hall, and it was going to be packed with medical professionals. And sure enough, the social event was swamped with people from the medical field. It was a standing buffet, so I quickly made myself scarce. I was hoping to enjoy some good food unnoticed and leave early. But there are always those who have a keen eye, and I was spotted by the last person I wanted to see. "Hut, is it okay for you to be lounging around here? Isn't your clinic in the middle of nowhere?" the man asked in a mocking tone. It was my old classmate Max from university. A guy I didn't like, who always flaunted the fact that he was the son of a university professor. I heard he's currently working at a university hospital. "Long time no see. I've closed the clinic for 2 days. We don't have any severely ill patients right now," I replied. "Well, it's water under the bridge now." Doing my best to keep a smile, I started making small talk with Max. Slowly, our old classmates started to gather around us. Surrounded by familiar faces, the conversation flowed. When I was asked to elaborate more on my presentation, it turned into a Q&A session. Max didn't seem to like that. He crossed his arms and started tapping his foot impatiently. And he didn't bother hiding his condescending attitude, frequently interrupting and making light of my responses. Gradually, my colleagues started to get fed up with Max's attitude. When an old friend I haven't seen in a while asked about my current job, I honestly told him it was a clinic in a remote mountainous area. "Well, you were the guy who almost dropped out of college. Guess you couldn't handle a big hospital, could you?" Max never missed an opportunity to chime in. "There are more raccoons than people there, right? Half the patients you see are probably raccoons, aren't they? But hey, if there's a serious case, they just airlift them out. So it's the perfect job for someone with your lack of skills," Max said, raising his voice intentionally. It was painfully obvious he was trying to embarrass me. I didn't even have the words to respond. Arguing would just encourage him, so I just glared at Max in silence. Then someone stepped between Max and me. I think people who don't understand how busy mountain clinics are should keep their opinions to themselves. Seeing the man who had stepped in, Max's face turned pale. I recognized the man as well. Dr. Liam. This guy was in the same year as me, but he stopped showing up for training, and now he's parading around as a doctor and even giving lectures. Can you believe that? The man, apparently a higher up at the university hospital and Max's boss, was speaking negatively about me, but his tone remained polite. Dr. Liam looked at me and smiled slightly. It seems he remembered me. "It's been a long time. Thank you for saving my life back then." As I began to bow in gratitude, Dr. Liam waved it off, saying that thanks weren't necessary. He said he was just doing his job, and he was more grateful to see me doing well. Max was shocked to discover that Dr. Liam and I knew each other, and seemed at a loss for words. He didn't want to put his foot in his mouth any further. Max, he was your classmate, right? But you guys graduated before him, didn't you? Dr. Liam asked Max, seeking confirmation. Max nodded. He stopped coming to training midway, pointing fingers at me. It felt like he was comparing me to a soldier who had deserted the battlefield. It was frustrating. Everyone has their own reasons. Max, have you ever observed one of his surgeries? When questioned, Max shook his head. Dr. Liam said, I see, with a sigh. Even if you give it your all, Max, it'll take you at least 5 years to reach his level. Max looked completely dumbfounded, not understanding what he was being told. I was also surprised, wondering when Dr. Liam had observed my surgery. Abroad, I had been in disaster zones and war zones, where time was of the essence. Probably, following experienced surgeons had honed my skills faster than I realized. Unbeknownst to me, professors from the university hospital had gathered around us. One professor who seemed familiar with me told Max, "Mind your manners." Max looked flustered, having never expected the professors to hold me in such high regard. It's okay, we were college buddies. When I said that, the professors seemed to understand, saying, if that's the case. In the end, surrounded by friends and professors throughout the party, I was far from a wallflower but ended up pretty exhausted. Talking with friends who work as professors and doctors, I realized that the educational elitism is still pretty bad. My friends seem pretty fed up with it too. Despite their skills, just because they graduated from a regional medical school, they often get fewer opportunities to perform surgeries. Some of my pals are really torn up about it, feeling that these decisions aren't made with the patient's best interests in mind. By the time the party wrapped up, I had a pretty clear mental map of the politics of the medical community. Outside the venue, high-ranking professors were being ushered into taxis in order of their status. I just watched from a distance. It's a clear hierarchy, isn't it? This is the state of our university hospitals and the medical community. Bootlickers rise to the top regardless of their actual abilities, and those areas that genuinely need medical attention are ignored, I mused. I noticed people obsequiously bowing to Professor Jacob, who happens to be the father of Max. Max stood beside his father, acting all high and mighty. It's not exactly hereditary, but it seems Max will be the one to take Jacob's place. What a joke. I unintentionally blurted that out, and Professor Liam chuckled in response. I transferred from a rural clinic to a university hospital to change this very system. I realized I couldn't do much in a secluded clinic. If you don't remove the pus from its root, it'll keep coming back, he said. He explained. So you explained this to Samantha before leaving that clinic? I asked. Dr. Liam looked at me with surprise. Huh? Ever since you left, Samantha's been mentally unstable. I was about to voice my complaints when he interrupted. That's absolutely not possible. He was adamant that she would never become mentally unstable. His response was so strong it left me stunned. Surprise. Suddenly, a slender arm draped around my shoulder, and it was Samantha's voice. I turned in shock to see an emotionless Samantha hugging me from behind. She wouldn't get hurt just because I left. Samantha's not like that, Liam said with a somewhat troubled expression. While I stood there, too stunned to utter a word, the two of them exchanged greetings like long time no see. It didn't seem like they were former lovers meeting up again. For starters, this guy isn't my boyfriend. Samantha pointed at Dr. Liam, saying that. The doctor nodded in agreement. Yup. So, then, I just wanted to talk with Dr. Stephen. Samantha explained with a cheeky smile. She told me with a chuckle that she had played a bit of a role because she wanted the chance to speak with me. Samantha is actually a philosopher by training. She's always been a bit odd. Samantha puffed up her cheeks. That's just prejudice. For me, that wasn't the issue at hand. Even though Samantha had come to pick me up, my mind was still in a whirl. Hey, Stephen, would you help me out at the university hospital? I thought I could manage on my own, but it's becoming too much. Dr. Liam was asking as casually as if he were inviting me for a walk. And he wasn't just asking me to work at the hospital. It was as if he was inviting me to take down a massive barrier together. A few days later, I was at the clinic. The only difference from before was a pile of cardboard boxes filled with my stuff. Samantha, who supposedly didn't need my counseling anymore, showed up again. Through the gap in the exam room curtains, I saw her sneakily wrapping an old-fashioned medicine bottle in cloth. Whoa, the sight made me blurt out in surprise. Surprisingly, she was trying to wrap an old-fashioned medicine bottle in a cloth. Realizing she was caught, she clicked her tongue lightly. "What are you doing? I just wanted it." She probably wanted the vintage medicine bottle. I knew she had a thing for retro stuff. "You can't take that. The next doctor might need it, right?" But Samantha cheekily puffed up her cheeks and called me a tightwad. "Your departure is tomorrow, right?" After some contemplation, I had decided to accept Dr. Liam's offer. I felt that to make a significant change in the current medical world, we'd have to tackle the core issues. Turns out, my successor is none other than that Max who apparently threw his hat in the ring. I got a call from him to let me in on what I didn't know. Surprisingly, Max has been really engaged with healthcare in his own way. Makes you realize you never truly know someone until you get to know them deeply. Erica decided to stay at the clinic as a nurse. "If you came along with me, you'd be worth 100 people, I mused, trying to convey feelings I hadn't shared till the very end. I wanted to put it more eloquently, but this was the best I could muster right now. To Samantha, it seemed like she could see right through me. She didn't even look surprised. "If in 3 years, you haven't become a puppet to power, you learn the right to woo me." With a firm point at me, Samantha made her declaration. "What? Just the right. Just the right. Who knows where we'll end up from here? But I know I need her in my life going forward. For now, I'll just do my best until the day I've earned the right to woo her." "So, when did you start liking me?" With mischievous eyes, Samantha looked right at me. "I'll confess when I've earned the right to woo you." To my reply, Samantha laughed heartily, saying, "You got me there." I've lived for nearly 30 years, and I've never been popular with women, but for some reason, kids seem to like me. Babies and strollers passing by on the street, toddlers being led by their parents. They all look at my face with such curiosity and never take their eyes off me. Some even cheerfully stretch out their arms as if wanting to be picked up. Once, while I was crouching on the sidewalk tying my loose shoelaces, an unfamiliar little boy approached and offered me a balloon. I went through college without much of a plan, and when it was time to start job hunting, I realized I didn't have a particular career passion. The only thing going for me was that kids seemed to like me. That being said, I wasn't especially fond of children. But somehow, although I wasn't sure if it was a special skill, I thought of becoming a child care worker. After working at a daycare as an assistant for 3 years, I got my child care certification. When I moved to another daycare, I realized something about myself. I'm not a morning person. It's exhausting to deal with hyperactive kids in the morning. So, I looked for a daycare that had afternoon shifts. I found one 6 months ago that offered evening care. It's a great place to work. My hours are from 2 p.m. to 11 p.m. "Good evening, I'm Mary." Dressed in my uniform, an apron with a bear on it, I cheerfully greeted her at the entrance. "Good evening, Catherine's mom." After glancing at me, she gave a cold and emotionless stare. Darn it, I slipped up. She didn't like being referred to as Catherine's mom. Catherine is her 4-year-old daughter, who is under our care 3 times a week. She came to pick up little Catherine after work. People often assume that parents who use night care work in nightlife professions, but in reality, they have various jobs like office workers, teachers, and entrepreneurs. She is a doctor. She's a physician working 3 times a week at a nearby clinic in our neighborhood. I heard she divorced a few years back and is now a single mother. Good evening, Mary. I quickly corrected my greeting and went to wake up sleeping Catherine. Man, that was nerve-wracking. Almost had a heart attack there. To be honest, I had a crush on Catherine's mom. I mean, Mary. I liked her pale skin, natural makeup, and her slightly stern and tsundere appearance. There's no reason. You like what you like. I began to look forward to those brief moments when we exchanged a few words or when I updated her about Catherine's day. After all, in my eyes, it was just a fleeting crush from a plain man nearing his 30s who's never been popular with women. Whether it was the ice cream I had late at night or maybe I caught a chill, I ended up with an upset stomach that day. I've always had a weak stomach. Thinking it was just the usual, I decided to get checked out at the nearby clinic. While filling out the form at the reception, I realized something huge. Today was the day to take care of little Catherine, which means she works at this clinic. Man, how clueless am I, getting treated by her. Do I tell her about my upset stomach? Sweat poured down my forehead. In a panic, I glanced at the staff schedule posted on the waiting room wall. Sure enough, among the 3 doctors listed, there was the name Mary. My chances of being treated by her is 33.3%. I'm no baseball expert, but isn't a 300 hitter pretty good? Does that mean it's hard to achieve? Does that mean my chances of seeing her are also pretty slim? What am I thinking? It's just a 1 in 3 chance. Duh. Trying to calm my racing heart, I took a deep breath. John. I was called into the examination room and, of course, she was the one waiting for me. I immediately recognized her, but something felt different. The first thing I noticed was the thin silver glasses she wore, which she doesn't wear when picking up Catherine in the evening. Her usually subtle makeup was almost non-existent. And the white coat she wore, well, it was a light pink really, but it suited her well. I said, "How are you?" with a polite smile, trying to make a good impression. However, she didn't react at all. She simply checked the form I'd filled out, asked a few routine questions while glancing at her computer, and performed the usual checks. Throughout, she was all business. According to her, my stomach troubles were likely a one-off thing. She ordered a blood test just to be sure and prescribed some medication. I arrived at the daycare 2 hours late. Catherine suddenly hugged me as soon as I walked in. "What's up, Catherine?" While I was comforting her, a female coworker told me that Catherine had been fussy all the time I was absent. While I was away, little Catherine was quite fussy the whole time. She must really like me, I guess. "Good evening. This is Mary." That night, as I greeted her at the daycare's entrance to hand over Catherine, she asked, "Good evening. I'll bring Catherine over now." That's what I replied. She then asked, "How are you feeling?" By the next day, my stomach issues were completely resolved. But ever since that day, I haven't felt great. I don't have a fever, and my appetite is okay. "How are you feeling?" Just thinking about her words made my stomach churn and gave me palpitations for days. That day, as always, after playing with the kids, I was preparing snacks. Then Catherine, looking grumpy, clung to me. "What's wrong, Catherine?" When I asked, she responded, "I don't like that person. I really don't." Over and over. "Good evening. I'm Mary." That night, when she came to pick up Catherine, I reported the matter to her. I'm not sure who she's talking about, but Catherine seemed quite troubled. I said hesitantly. Mary's face darkened as she responded, "Is that so?" I had no idea. About 10 days later, just past 7 p.m., the phone in my office rang. It wasn't the day to look after Catherine. I had just finished putting the kids to bed after dinner and was taking a breather. I happened to pick up the phone. I kept saying hello, but there was just silence on the other end. What's this? A prank call? Annoyed, I hung up. But the phone immediately rang again. Who is this? What do you want? I boldly asked. A familiar voice replied, "Are you John?" I recognized it as Catherine's right away. "What's wrong? What happened?" I asked. Through her tears, Catherine responded, Mommy needs help." It's all because of me. I sensed something very wrong was happening. Where are you? At home. Once I confirmed she was home, I said, I'm on my way, checked the address on our registration forms, and dashed out. Catherine's place was just 2 subway stops away. I figured taking the subway would be faster than hailing a cab. I ran to the nearest station and jumped onto a train. It was still during the evening rush hour, and the train was packed. 2 high school girls nearby giggled as they looked at me. I followed their gaze to see. I was still wearing my bear-themed apron. I took it off, clutching it under my arm, and used the scribbled address to find Catherine's apartment building. Luckily, another resident was just entering, allowing me to bypass the security door. I repeatedly rang the doorbell and called out to Catherine. The door opened, and Catherine clung to me. I entered the apartment. Mary, it's me, John from the daycare. Are you okay? As I called out and moved further into the hallway, I heard her faint voice. Over here, I can't open the door. Please help. Looking in the direction of her voice, I saw a tall metal shelf had fallen at a 45-degree angle, jamming the bathroom door shut. It's all right. Right now. I tried to lift the fallen shelf. However, it was firmly stuck and wouldn't budge. I put my back into it, trying to move the shelf with grunts of effort. Please, help me out. I heard her desperate plea. With my back hurting, I changed my stance and pushed with all my might. Just a little more, almost. With a jerk, the tip of the shelf came free from the bathroom door. The shelf, being made of steel, was light and was easily propped against the wall. Suddenly, the bathroom door swung open with force, striking me hard in the back. Ouch! I couldn't help but yell out, rubbing my back. I'm so sorry, she said, looking genuinely remorseful. When I called the daycare, they told me I could head straight home for the day. Catherine, it's bedtime, she said to Catherine, who was clinging to me as we sat in the living room drinking coffee. When I offered to help put her to bed, she opened the bedroom door. On the double bed, there was a child's pillow and next to it an adult-sized one. My heart raced, thumping loudly. I thought I might even get a nosebleed. After putting Catherine to bed and returning to the living room, she explained the situation. She works 3 days a week at a clinic near the daycare and also at another hospital where she has been working for a long time. The head of that hospital was her mentor. Recently, the hospital director had proposed a match for her. The suitor was a distant relative of the director. They had already been on several dinner dates. It felt like a bell tolling loudly in my head. He's not a bad guy, but I'm just not sure if I want to date him. She had 2 reasons for her hesitation. One was Catherine. When she introduced Catherine to the guy, Catherine took an instant dislike to him. It suddenly clicked for me. I realized that when Catherine previously said, I don't like that man, I hate him, she was talking about him. They had plans to meet him again on her next day off. But that night, when she told Catherine about it, she became moody. That's when she went to the bathroom, and a sulking Catherine, in a fit of temper, knocked over the steel shelf. The shelf was brand new and empty, so even Catherine could easily topple it. But how did you manage to call for help in that situation? As I was impressed, she mentioned she had set it up beforehand for an instant connection. I thought of calling the daycare on the spot and had Catherine call them. She said that, then added sincerely, thank you, expressing her gratitude to me. After leaving her place and walking along the road in front of the apartment complex, a thought suddenly crossed my mind. What was that second reason she mentioned she was troubled about? About a month later, little Catherine was leaving the daycare. When I asked the principal why, he said it was due to her mother's work commitments. Then, on Catherine's last day, she said, it's Mom's birthday soon. This is a gift, and drew a picture of her mother's face. When I tried to take a peek at the drawing, Catherine covered it with her body. What's wrong, Catherine? Let me see. Despite my coaxing, she kept refusing to show it. However, I could tell there was a tiny figure drawn next to the mother's face in the picture. That evening, the time had finally come to say goodbye to both Mary and Catherine. I plucked up the courage to ask Mary, is it about the job at that local clinic? I've decided to quit, she replied. Her voice sounded distant. She sounded a bit irritated. She further explained, in a matter-of-fact tone, that she would now be working full-time at another hospital she had been affiliated with. which has a daycare facility. Catherine would be taken care of there full-time. So, she's decided to go ahead with that matchmaking. Walking out to the daycare's gate to see them off, Catherine kept looking back and waving at me. But Mary never once looked back, seeming quite indifferent. I felt a lump in my throat. A few days later, a call for me came through at the daycare's office. It was from Mary. She wanted me to come to her place next Thursday at 6 in the evening. I told her I had work and couldn't make it at that time. Please make it work. I'll be waiting, she said, and hung up before I could respond. I was puzzled. Why would she want to see me? I had no clue whatsoever. I managed to convince the principal to give me the day off. All day, I was restless, and I couldn't even eat. I left my home a little past 4 p.m. The nearest station to her apartment was less than 30 minutes away, so I arrived over an hour earlier than the scheduled time. I went up to her apartment building a few times, then headed back to the train station, wandered around the shopping district, and returned to her apartment building again. After doing that a couple of times, I finally rang the doorbell at her building's entrance at 6:05. "We've been waiting for you. Come on in." Despite having invited me over, her voice lacked warmth or friendliness. When she greeted me at the entrance, her face was tense with anxiety. Urged by her, I stepped inside the apartment. Suddenly, Catherine came running from the back. "Long time no see, John," and she clung to my leg. Once led to the dining area. The table was laid out with a lavish spread: salad, fried chicken, French fries, pizza, and a whole birthday cake. Taken aback by the unexpected setup, I looked at her. "Today's my birthday, remember, my 31st. That's why." I thought to myself, she could have just mentioned it right from the start. "Catherine insisted on inviting you." Oh, wasn't Catherine drawing a birthday present for her mom the other day? Catherine then playfully slapped me, saying I shouldn't have mentioned it. The drawing was meant to be a surprise. "You knew about today, didn't you?" "Well, I knew it was coming up but didn't know the exact date." Upon hearing this, her eyes widened, and her face quickly turned red. "Oh my, how embarrassing," she exclaimed, covering her face with both hands. Just then, Catherine brought over the drawing she had made as a present. Both she and I exchanged knowing glances upon seeing the drawing. After that, the three of us sat down and enjoyed her birthday dinner. During dinner, she opened up about something personal, something I have never heard before and probably wouldn't hear again. She mistakenly believed that, even after Catherine told me it was her birthday, I ignored it. She didn't like being referred to as Catherine's mom by me because she felt I saw her just as a daycare mom and nothing else. When she picked up Catherine from daycare, she always made an effort to put on makeup and contact lenses because she was conscious of me. She was absent on Catherine's last day at the daycare because the thought of not seeing me again was too painful for her. Basically, she had always had feelings for me. What about that matchmaking? I turned it down. She explained that her going full-time at the clinic run by the doctor who proposed the matchmaking was purely coincidental. She also said that he wasn't the type to mix personal with professional matters. That was me jumping to conclusions. Besides, the head doctor said if that's the case, there's nothing he can do. What do you mean if that's the case? The main reason she hesitated about the matchmaking was Catherine, but there was another reason I hadn't heard. That's because I have someone I'm interested in now. With that said, she unfolded the birthday present drawing that Catherine made. It was a portrait of her, drawn by Catherine. What caught her eye, and she pointed out, was a tiny figure next to it. A man in an apron with a teddy bear emblem on the chest. And with that, my faint admiration became a reality. After dating her for a while, I casually remarked, "But a doctor, and just a preschool teacher like me." She instantly flared up in anger, raising her voice. "What do you mean just? I hate when you belittle yourself like that. I really hate it." Time flew by and now, Catherine, who'll be entering elementary school next year, calls me Dad. How did you find today's story? Please hit likes and subscribe to the channel, and it will be a great motivation for us to continue our work. We're looking forward to reading your comments. See you in the next video.